Well, hello again, and welcome to another episode of Wrestling Beyond the Pulpit with the Good News Gang. I am joined this week by Pastor Curtis Clark from Marysville UMC and Pastor Jackie Ranieri from Clare UMC. And I am your host, Pastor Matt West from Marble Memorial UMC in Milan. And once again, we're missing Pastor Matt and Pastor Kim. Duty calls, and Pastor Kim is dealing with the end of a term of seminary, and so we wish her the best of luck so she can finish out well. But we are here nonetheless to wrestle once again with this week's discussion questions, and we're going to be going maybe to some places that might make some people uncomfortable. Certainly some conversation around a couple of the questions that may be difficult for some. Just not so much to hear what we have to say or share about the questions, but just the topic itself may be hard, but we just wanted to let everybody know that we'll be talking about some recent incidents that have occurred in the news. And so just a heads up to prepare you for today's conversation. All right. Well, let me kick off the discussion with our icebreaker question. If you had to choose only one to enjoy over the holidays, would it be eggnog or mulled wine? Is that how you say it? Mulled?
Mulled, yes.
Yeah, mulled wine. What
Mulled
the heck
wine
is mulled wine?
It's usually like red wine with different like cloves and nutmeg and cinnamon and things like that in it. I've never had mulled wine, I don't think. Maybe once. I would prefer eggnog myself, but in very limited amounts. It's obviously pretty thick and rich, and but
I'd probably go with the wine.
I almost bought some the other morning, but because I'm the only one in the house who actually likes eggnog. So
yeah, I'd probably go with the wine. I'm not a big fan of eggnog.
No, nothing says Christmas like eggnog. I'm sorry, but it's just one of those things.
Well, I mean, if we're being completely honest, I would say nothing says Christmas like hot chocolate with a shot of peppermint schnapps, but
there you go. I know that wasn't one of the options.
Right.
Well, it wasn't. That's why I'm going with the mulled wine. That sounds more, more tasty to me than eggnog, but to each their own, right?
Right.
Right.
Excuse me. Well, so if you've been paying attention to the news recently, we are getting to that time of year where certainly companies are looking to make some moves before the end of the year, shall we say. And so recently, a CEO called a meeting with 900 members of its workforce via Zoom. So this happened just last week. And the CEO said, if you're on this call, you are part of the unlucky group that is being laid off. Your employment here is terminated effective immediately. And the name of this company, better.com. So discuss the manner and timing right before the holidays of this layoff. And just to keep in mind, this was 9% of the company's workforce. And so as we discuss this, maybe somewhere in there too, if you have a bad firing story, feel free to share. Yeah, I saw a TikTok on this, and it looked brutal. I mean, like, to sit there and watch, the CEO just kind of sitting there almost nonchalantly and be like, well, gotta do what we gotta do. Sorry.
And I think he even said, I mean, it was a little, as I was watching it, I think he said something along the lines of, well, I'm not gonna try and cry this time because I did last time. And it's like, this is not about you, pal.
No.
And it was hard to watch. I felt really bad for those who, that's how they were, let go. It wasn't from a direct supervisor or management. It was, and I guess some would say, well, yeah, the CEO took time to do it, but it was like a 5-minute Zoom video, and that was it. It was basically, we've had the downsides, the marketplace is doing this, yada, yada, yada. You're fired. You've got 4 weeks severance, 6 weeks or 8 weeks of benefits and COBRA, and you'll be getting an email from HR. And if you don't get an email, go ahead and reach out to them. I mean,
Wow.
Well, and I mean, the thing is, it doesn't
Yeah.
make it any better, great. That's awful nice of you to offer severance, but like,
Right.
if there's no indication, no like forewarning, like, hey, hop on this Zoom call today. Sorry.
yeah.
Well,
Sorry, not sorry. My pocket needs more money in it, so we're gonna have to let you go. It's just, it almost makes me think of Christmas Vacation.
Right.
Clark Griswold gets the Jelly of the Month club instead of his bonus, because you got to think about it. This time of year, people are making plans, they're making purchases, and probably more often than not, people are using their credit cards to make those purchases, relying on the income to pay them off, once they get it, but then to be like, sorry, no job, like, well,
the part that, Curtis shared that article with us beforehand, and I found it intriguing that, the CEO didn't even wait for everyone to get connected. Like,
Right.
So there were still people trying to get, connected to the Zoom call, and he just started right off, like say 9:00, here you go, sharp. And people are still trying to get into the call, and he's like sharing the news. He didn't wait for everybody to get there, number one. And number two, the one employee was sharing like he was expecting a promotion. He was told he was going to be getting this big, huge, like I don't know if it was VP or whatever. He was getting this big promotion. So yeah, they were counting on this. I'm sure maybe they planned what? And he had like a family of 7, I think it was. And it was just like, wow.
Right. And obviously the timing is just like Matt said,
It's
just
horrible.
it's crappy. I've never, part of the other question was I've never been directly a part of something like that. I've been at my last career before coming into ministry. We were contracted at a particular company, and this particular company was going through several years of downsizing or right sizing, as they would call it, and have been in the off. I can remember being in the building when these type of layoffs, and they call them layoffs. You're not being laid off. You're being fired.
Mhm.
Happen, and it's difficult because you become you get to know these people, and not just as customers but as colleagues and friends, and and the next thing you know, they're not there, and you sit from the outside, kind of stunned and shocked. But you can't even imagine what it must be like for them to have to go home that day and say, hey, oh, by the way, I lost my job today.
right.
Well,
that's like, from the question, it's like he made the statement, you're part of the unlucky group that's being laid off, and then follows it with your employment is terminated effective immediately. So which is it? Am I being laid off or am I being terminated? Like, they're not one and the same.
Right.
I don't have a bad firing story, but I've only lost a job once. It was actually when I was working for the school system, just because of budget cuts. My position was, they cut my position. And so it was just but fortunately, like, I had some, heads up, it wasn't like it was a surprise or whatever, and certainly it worked out in the end that they were able to get some grant money to bring me back. But there was a little uncertainty for a little bit about what I would do in the meantime, because so you'll get a chuckle out of this to find out, because I don't think I've ever shared this with you. So fortunately, I, because of my connections with other parts of the school, I ended up getting to head the, I don't know what the proper terminology is, but I got to be lunch lady for a couple months at one of our elementary schools. So
fun.
yeah, so the head of, the
Food service.
Yeah, she said, "Hey, I need somebody, and I know you're probably looking for something. Would you be interested?" And I was like, "Sure." So it just happened to be the elementary school that was right behind the high school, so it worked out great. Because I was still coaching at the time, so I would go over there and get out breakfast and put together lunch and clean up, and then I could head to practice or whatever. So I mean, I was rather fortunate in that situation, but unfortunately, like in these situations, it's not as easy to recover from that. And that's sometimes what's the difficulty is what's the job market look like for these people, especially this time of year. I mean, you would think because of the pandemic, people are hiring. I think certain places are, but not everybody, and it can certainly make a difference in people's lives, but it also might be the chance for them to start a second career. Who knows?
Right. But unfortunately, though, I mean, not to get too much into it, but, finding it personally that these companies are all hiring, but they're not hiring full time. So, they're limited, the benefits are kind of going wayside for, a lot of companies not paying out. So that can hurt a family, because I think of this gentleman, family of 7, that can hurt. I mean,
yeah. I had recently, maybe a couple months ago or what, had saw something where there was a company where the CEO decided to cut his pay to give his employees a pay increase. Mm-hmm. And everybody ridiculed him, saying he was an idiot, that he was this was like a bad move and that his business would fail or what. The employees are happier and businesses went up since he did this.
Yep.
And it totally worked out, so I mean, to hear a CEO be willing to put his employees in front of himself, that he took a pay cut so that could happen and to still be successful, and it didn't hurt the business in any way, profits didn't go down, anything of that nature, pretty darn impressive, so I mean, that's, you hope for more of those kinds of stories versus, that's just the timing, the fact that he didn't wait for other people to get online. I mean, how would you like to walk in the middle of that?
Right.
Oh, yeah. What if somebody got on at the moment he says your employment here is terminated effective immediately?
Right.
What?
Or someone missed the call all together.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And shows up to work to not knowing what's going on.
Right.
Here's your box of stuff. What?
Yeah, I mean, that stinks. That's really, wow. But no time, I mean, we say because of holidays and everything else going on, but really no time is a good time.
No.
Nobody wants to get fired.
No, but even a mass firing like that, I mean, it's just, depending on the industry, depending on what it is, like the hospitality industry, depending on where you live, if you're up north and you're getting laid off, it's like, whoa, this is a really bad time because really nobody hires in the wintertime. But if you're in the South and you get laid off, I mean, you got a better chance of getting a job, but not you'll lose your ranking of where you were in your last position. So right. It's hard. It's a hard time.
Yeah. Oh, most definitely. Well, another current event that has taken place took place actually here in our own home state of Michigan. And if, for some reason you've missed the news, we're referring to the school shooting at Oxford High School. So the day before the Oxford shooting, a teacher at Oxford High reported that the student was searching for ammunition on his phone. According to the prosecutor for, I believe it's Oakland County. The school reached out to the mother, but never heard back. The mother later texted her son about the episode, and this is a direct quote: "LOL, I'm not going to get mad at you. You have to learn not to get caught." After the news of an active shooter at the school, the mother texted Ethan, "Don't do it." Discuss the role of parenting in this tragedy and how it perhaps could have been avoided. This is a tough one, folks. Something that, over the last week, we've been talking to each other about. We talked a little bit before we recorded last week about this incident. This isn't an easy one. This is, like trying to wrestle Andre the Giant. It's a tough one, but nonetheless, something I think that my colleagues would agree that needs to be talked about. Certainly some disturbing things there from the mother, at least in my opinion. I don't know. I guess let's begin with discussing the role of parenting in this tragedy. That maybe how it could have helped avoid it.
Yeah. Well, I think so many other details have come to light about possibly what the environment in the home was like, and it's some of it is assumptions and speculation. Some of it is based on fact. And let's just name that parenting is not easy. We're all doing it. We're all still doing it, even with kids out of the house and kids in the house. We never stop parenting. But I think when we have such influence on the young people, our kids at those very precious and influential times, I think we're seeing that the example we set, the words we say, sometimes the punishments we hand down and the encouragements we give really go a long way. Were there no reins on this child? We don't know. Is it bad parenting for parents to purchase a handgun for a child? In my view, my worldview, yes, it is. But others would have a very different opinion. But that's just my opinion. The response of LOL, just don't get caught, I think is dangerous. When especially, it's one thing if it's, if the kid is searching for, looking at a YouTube video, but it was actively searching for ammunition. And again, we know in hindsight now that the events led up to this tragedy. But I think when we, give our kids permission to just, don't get caught.
Yeah.
It's, I don't know.
Here we are 22 years later after Columbine,
Right.
still trying to answer this question.
Right.
I certainly think a lot of it begins at home because, in the Columbine incident, it was a matter of the parents didn't seem to be horribly involved in their children's lives, that they just kind of like, oh, okay, they're keeping busy. They, just assume that things must be all right, not really knowing what their child was doing and what they were going through. Right. But I mean, that's to me the saddest thing about this. This is 22 years later since, the first, well-known or well-covered school shooting. And we still have not seen any resolve to this issue. And for me personally, because I don't want to necessarily go down this rabbit hole right now or what, but as a parent, it's a little frustrating to watch the Supreme Court, who's, working over Roe versus Wade right now, that we have people that are fighting for embryos, fighting for the for life at its start. But then once they're born, I guess it's apparently free game, that we're not willing to put the same kind of energy into saving our children's lives from being shot at school. The fact that when I was in school, it was a fire drill and a tornado drill. Now it's fire, tornado, and lockdown drills that our children have to become accustomed to in case they happen. And
Right.
It did happen. And it happened in our own backyard here in the state of Michigan. We're not on the outside looking at other states going, oh my gosh, I feel so bad for them. This happened here.
Right.
And again, 22 years later, no resolve to the situation, and hopes that it never happens again. It's infuriating. I'm really bothered by a parent's response like that, to be like, oh, LOL. Like, hey, just don't get caught.
Right.
Like, really? Your child's looking for ammunition. Let's just go back to the basic idea of the fact that he's in school. So what's he supposed to be doing? Oh, he probably should be paying attention to his teacher and learning, not on his phone looking for ammunition.
But look at a lot of parenting right now. Parents aren't looking to be parents. They're looking to be their child's friend. And, and we have that, being in education, you see that over and over again. You don't want to be seen as a bad guy. So the school system's the bad people, because they're saying, hey, something's going on. Something's wrong here. And the parents are like, oh, they're fools, or there's so much disrespect from the parents to the schools and, so forth, that you see incidents like this more and more. Is it surprising? Not really. I mean, is it terrible? Absolutely. It's tragic that this is happening, but it's not something that just, happened after Columbine. I mean, there's been several incidents that's happened with this, and it's just, I don't know. I mean, I think we're losing parenting skills. We're losing that, I think there's just many generations that just lost the boat on how to be a parent. And it's sad. It's just a, tragic situation. And all the way around, that you got people blaming the school system. Why was he allowed to go back into the classroom? Then you got the other ones, the parents are bad. Then you got this one, the kid was crying out for help. Why wasn't anybody listening? I mean, it's tragic.
Yeah. Well, it's a systemic problem that we continue to fail to acknowledge. It goes beyond gun control. Yep. I mean, we are talking about more times than not mental health.
Absolutely.
But we fail to acknowledge that there is a mental health issue in this country.
Yes.
And I think in some ways that's what's occurred is like, okay, for years we didn't talk about our mental health, and if you did, you were weak. Right. And now that it's become in ways more acceptable to do so, well, now the water is boiled to a point where it's coming out of the pot now in these school shootings, grocery stores where, grown adults are walking into public places, opening fire, like, fine. I need to defend myself, and, we've allowed it to be acceptable in some fashion that by using a gun is how we do that.
Right.
But I think, it's an issue, but we also see other countries that have enforced gun control laws and don't seem to be having the issue that we do here in the United States. And this may be an upsetting comment, but, I'm not opposed to people having guns, but I am opposed to the NRA because they spend millions of dollars lobbying politicians to ensure that we continue to make sure everybody knows that the Second Amendment says we have the right to bear arms. Yeah, we do. But at the same time, to what extent and at what cost, and I have no problems with the parents being prosecuted in this case.
Right.
because I think they're just as guilty. I mean, to me, that's a red flag when the mom says, Ethan, don't do it. Meaning you must have had some inkling yourself. Something could have possibly happened and you didn't do anything.
Especially knowing that, hours before she sends that text, they're in the office with the student.
Right.
With a drawing that he had, in his own handwriting, in his own hand, had basically predicted what he was going to do.
Yeah.
And they made the choice not to take him out of school, not to bring him home. And it's, I think, so many frustrating points of this whole incident.
I agree
that there were so many opportunities for this not to happen.
Right.
Where someone should have just said, no, let's, if someone just would have acted, and we play the what if game all the time, what if they just had, taken him home? What if the school had searched his backpack? What if?
Mm-hmm.
But I think Jackie made the great point that, and I see it a lot with people who they want to be their kid's best friend. And I've told my kids, I am not here to be your best friend. I will not be your best friend. I have a best friend. I don't need another best friend.
Right.
And I don't want you to be my best friend. I want you to be my son, and I want you to be my daughter, and I'm going to be your dad. And there's a very distinct difference between me being your parent and me being your friend.
Absolutely.
There will be times where I will be a friend to you. There's going to be times where I'm going to be a pain in the ass to you too. Pardon my language. That's my role as a father, is to prepare you to be an adult, a responsible adult that is not a burden on society.
Amen. Yes.
And but yet I see a lot of parents who they're either totally oblivious to what's going on in their kid's life, or they're like so immersed in their kid's life that their kids don't have an opportunity to live their own life and be their own individual. And again, we all have different parenting styles, and it's a very delicate walk that we have to do. And again, I'm not saying that I'm the perfect parent. I'm not saying any of us are.
Right.
And I think we all look at our kids through our parent lenses at times too, and we don't want to see some of the flaws. We don't want to see some of the hurt, and we want to see, we want to absorb some of the pain for them, but we need to let them experience some of that with those hands ready to catch them and hold them when they fall. But we need to allow them to experience heartache. We need to allow them to experience loss and hurt, as long as it's not too damaging. I've shared with you guys personally just some of the things that we've gone through as a family the last couple of years here, with one of our kids that, we had to pull back and push at certain times, and we're seeing the benefit of that now. But it's hard. But I think that I think it will come out that there were other warning signs within this family unit that this incident, this disaster, could have been further prevented. There had to have been other warning signs in this kid's history, other than just last Tuesday morning, him scribbling out some words in a drawing. There had to have been.
Well, I mean, in some cases, I mean, it's an inherited problem, in the fact that who knows what the parents were like. I mean, right. that our parents, as much as sometimes we want to deny it, have a huge influence on how we parent. There were things about my own father that frustrated the hell out of me, because I just thought, like, that's, in my mind, that's not how a dad should be. Mm-hmm. But, I would tell myself, like, I'll never be like that. I'll never do that. And then there were times where it's like, I didn't want to acknowledge it or what. And then of course, my wife would call me by my father's first name in those moments. And I'd be like, don't ever call me, don't call me my dad's name, right. and it's like, but then taking a step back and realizing, like, mm-hmm. as much as I hate to say it, there were certainly times that the way I was acting was influenced by my father. And so I think, it's, I don't, there isn't a whole lot of discussion too, aside from the mental health discussion, like, giving parents coping skills to help them handle situations. I think in terms of, school counselors, one, they're expected to do so much that they can't really do the counseling part because they're trying to deal with, class schedules and standardized testing and all these other things that it's hard for them to make time for the real issues.
Right.
In turn, then being able to follow up sometimes with parents and be like, hey, just want you to know, here's kind of what's going on here at school. Is there any way that I can help you at home, whatever it may be, or let alone maybe some standalone classes for parents to help them be better parents. It doesn't happen.
Right.
And so you're kind of, even as parents, we're kind of in the same boat as kids, where it's like, there are certainly some things that we're trying to sort out, especially when it's your first child. Once you've had one or two, you kind of figure things out and it gets easier. But when it's your first one, I mean, I know with our oldest, as he got older, there were certainly situations where it's like, okay, I remember the freedoms that I had when I was that age, but at the same time, I kind of felt like maybe I was trying to give him those freedoms, but then was kind of being a little strict. And I'm like, okay, how do I find that happy balance? But then when our second son came along, it was a lot easier because, all right, I went through that. Now I've got some experience that I can maybe formulate a better decision on how to parent him when this occurs for him. But yeah, there is no one answer. It's not a cookie cutter subject. It certainly is something that, requires some change, I think, in some fashion. I had shared in my message Sunday, or using my message from Sunday, talked about how when we wait, it's not meant to be a period of inactivity. These kinds of situations are not the time to sit and wait for something to happen or to change. This is the time for us to actively be the change. But I don't know.
You're right.
All right. Well, let's move along then. We hope that those of you that are watching can understand where we're coming from. Maybe you have your own thoughts, and certainly, we're always willing as pastors to have those conversations with you as well. And I think it's important for everybody to be open to both sides of a conversation, as opposed to just taking one stance and saying that there is no other way. But anywho. So it says that this season for Christians celebrates the incarnation, or the divine becoming human. Gregory, another one of those words I can't pronounce. Anyway, Gregory was a 4th century archbishop of Constantinople.
Constantinople.
Yeah. And asserted the necessity of affirming the full humanity of Jesus. And he was quoted as saying, "For that which he has not assumed, he has not healed." Discuss the theological implications of this quote. And just to offer some context, in Gregory's context, in the early church, people struggled more with affirming the humanity of Jesus than affirming his divinity. And has that flipped today. So the quote again was, "For that which he has not assumed, he has not healed." Thoughts?
I'm pulling up the quote, so hang on. So I can have eyes on it too.
Curtis will let you start that one. I'm like, what?
It's interesting, though, as far as the context point they offer, in that people at that time struggled with affirming Jesus's humanity, but not his divinity.
Right.
Like, I don't know. That seems kind of odd that it's like, oh, they're divine, but they're not human. I guess is kind of how I would take that. Like, how could you make that distinction, or how could you believe that he was one but not the other?
Right.
It's kind of that mythology kind of quote, like Zeus, he had all these great powers and all these great things, but they didn't consider him human. But yet,
Yeah.
I just, I don't know. It just kind of.
But I mean, I guess could you imagine, seeing Jesus and being like, I don't know if you're quite human, but you are definitely divine.
Yeah.
So Gregory is saying that it's necessary for us to accept that Jesus was fully human. And the quote, maybe it's easier to understand if we say, for that which God has not assumed, God has not healed. Because it's capital He, so we're talking about God, Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
For that which Jesus has not assumed, Jesus has not healed. I don't know if that helps or not.
Yeah, it's clear as mud there, but thank you. So does it go back to that argument of, was he a prophet or was he really the Messiah? Was he,
Right.
It's kind of like how I see this being, do you believe or do you not believe? We all believe he was, they all believe he was human, or he was not human, he was divine.
Well, I'm okay. So I'm going to take it from this viewpoint, being that we've been talking about parenting. And if we insert God for he, maybe it's that because God is not assumed maybe what is going on, hence why he hasn't healed what is happening. Kind of that idea of like, if we don't know what's going on with our own children, how can we heal them? How can we make them feel better?
Or if we don't fully accept Jesus as fully human and fully divine, then our faith we don't fully believe in God. Then the world can't be fully healed if we don't have full faith in the divine and the humanity of Jesus.
The professor has spoken.
I don't know.
Yes. I like the idea, like you said, the world, not God, but the world. The world is not healed. And that I think is more easier to accept and understand, more so than saying God didn't. I think it's the world. I really do.
Yeah. So I guess go ahead.
I was going to say, so the second part of that question has that flipped today. So it says the early church struggled with affirming the humanity of Jesus rather than affirming his divinity. Do you think the church today affirms his divinity rather than his humanity? More so?
I think it depends on the denomination. That's my 2 cents.
Well, I mean, I certainly think there are circles that believe Jesus was human, but not divine. And as far as has it flipped today, I mean, we talk about, Christ being God in human form. So how you can't accept both, Jesus being human and divine, that makes it a little more difficult. I mean, if you acknowledge that Christ, was God who came to us in human form, well, God is divine. How can they not be both? Or how could Jesus not be both?
Right. But what about the idea that you have to believe in the incarnation to have full faith? I remember, I want to say a couple of years ago at annual conference, we were having a late night gathering with the bishop and beginning some conversation about, the upcoming split and how divided we are. And I want to say, and I may be misquoting, but I want to say that that we're at such levels of not united in our beliefs, that at a gathering of bishops, it was stated, that there were several who didn't believe in the incarnation, who didn't believe Jesus was fully divine. And that's, it was challenging for a lot of us just to hear that a ecclesial leader in a major denomination denied the incarnation of Christ for whatever reason. So I think there are people who will have full faith but not fully believe that Jesus was fully divine and fully human. It's not my belief, but
right.
I think there are some who would believe that.
And I think it's flipped. I think it's flipped both ways.
Yeah. I think there's two. There's people who see Jesus simply as a good moral teacher, someone who did a lot of good, but don't have full belief in some of the divine acts that he actually did them.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and I'm sure some of that confusion is also caused by those that he hung out with versus the ones some people felt he should have.
Sure.
I think maybe if he would have been, more in cahoots with the Pharisees and Sadducees or whatever, then they might have held him up higher, versus, oh, this guy's just hanging out with all the drunkards and the sinners and the prostitutes. Like, how could he be divine?
Right.
Interesting. Good one. Well, we got another doozy here to end our conversation with. I had not heard about this till I read this. But Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has proposed a new military force in Florida that he, not the Pentagon, would control. DeSantis pitched the idea as a way to further support the Florida National Guard during emergencies like hurricanes. States do have the power to create defense forces separate from the National Guard. What do you think about a state military force without federal oversight?
I think there needs to be boundaries. I mean, I get it, being from Florida, living in Florida for 28 years, and the hurricanes, I mean, it took a long time. One house we lived in, we lost the roof, and it took a while to get any help, anybody to come through and help the people out. And, those types of situations, I'd be like, yes, it'd be great if that governor could just make that call. But there's other things I'd be like, nope. Military bases that were around us, I'm like, no, I don't think one person should make that call and again, depends on the situation. I think there needs to be boundaries on that call.
But when you have a state National Guard, because he says to further support, at that point, isn't it just a militia?
Yeah.
I'm a little concerned about, a governor having his own posse, to just call out whenever he feels necessary. I don't know. That's a fine line to walk.
And I think we have historical context when we see whether it's governors, not so much governors, but other leaders using police forces or their own military forces to impose their will on the people. And that, I think that is what, and most of those examples come out very bad for the people.
Well, I'm thinking about incidents like, let's go back, to, let's say, as an example, when the George Floyd incident occurred. Imagine if that state's governor had a group at their disposal. How, I don't know. To me, I just envision it making things worse versus better. That'd be my big concern.
As I said, I think there needs to be boundaries. I mean, yes, you have this right to call this, but when it comes to that, one man should not have the power, or woman, I should say, sorry. But one man or woman or one person should not have that total call for a whole state.
If there were checks and balances in place like there is at the federal level, it's, obviously,
Absolutely.
yes, we have the president but there are also people in line that it's like there has to be a chain of command in order for there to be checks and balances, as opposed to one person being able to. Well, and the comparison that popped into my mind, people here in our own state got upset with our own governor at the start of the pandemic because they just felt like she had too much control.
Mhm.
Well, to me, this would be another example of like, you're giving one person way too much control if you're going to allow them to have their own military force,
Right.
and be in control of it. Because I would tend to agree with Curtis, where it's like, then it's going to end up becoming, enforcing of their own will and ideals,
or of their party's will and ideals.
Right. Because then I start thinking about like, okay, what about the next time we start voting? Is he going to use his own military force to go and impose, voter suppression, or making sure that, things are on the up and up, and then all of a sudden, we've got somebody getting shot when they went to go vote, a lot of murky water there with that particular issue. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess I'm struggling to see, like I understand, from what you said too, Jackie, like the response isn't always quick, but I also think, Curtis and I were talking before we started recording today, sometimes there's that immediate knee-jerk panic in situations that those that are in control of these situations, as far as like the National Guard or whatnot, they're trying to formulate based on the information they receive the best time to respond. More often than not, people want an immediate response, but that may make matters worse versus let's make sure we got, everything sorted out before we do that, and so, lot of questions there, and certainly some things that would have to be kind of hashed out. But that worries me when you've got a National Guard to then supplement that with, what I would just deem a militia. Scary stuff.
I agree.
Well, my friends, we have come to the end of our discussion here, but as always, I like to offer you the opportunity to offer any final thoughts before we say goodbye. And so either of you have something you'd like to share with our audience before we say goodbye?
I think just that, our words, our example, the things we do matter in the lives of not just our kids or grandkids, but of those who we have influence over, and those who are looking to us, as an example, as a moral witness.
Yeah. Pastor Jackie?
I say kudos, same thing, ditto as what Pastor Curtis says. And just, these were heavy topics. I even made the comment, I don't even want to deal with this, but I'm glad we did. I'm glad we kind of got through it and got our way through it. But yeah, it just tough discussions. And I think these are great topics even to sit and talk with our families about. And, especially, with the shooting situation, parents need to be talking to kids and, making sure everybody's safe and making sure everybody's okay mentally, even just, we need to open up more conversation on that. I think just as besides this level here, but at homes and all over, we need to be talking and just ensuring people's mental health right now.
Yeah. I would concur with both of you. I certainly am troubled and hope that we can live more like Christ to get away from this mentality of don't trust anybody. And I think it's important that we sit down and have those conversations, because kids are smarter than people give them credit for, so I mean, they are absorbing a lot more of what we do than most realize. And I think, a lot of them are capable of handling difficult conversations like these, so that then they know it's okay to be able to share what it is that they're feeling or what they're struggling with, versus just kind of leaving them to figure things out on their own, or not having any real direction on how to navigate some of these things. And if you don't know as a parent, then tell them that, and try to find an answer, versus just, well, as we're doing our Advent series called Waiting Room, don't just sit and wait, for the answer to, present itself. We need to be active and, be loving, others during this season and throughout the year. So yes, very difficult discussions, but great ones that I think need to be had. And is, just like Jesus, we got to make the comfortable uncomfortable.
I think one of the things that is, for me, that I kind of reflected on this whole week, and it's not the first time it's happened either, is that, like for my kids, this is the world that they live in. They don't know any other world than lockdown drills, school shootings, these kind of things, where we do. We grew up at a time where, like Matt said, we had fire drills and tornado drills, and that's it.
Yep.
I talked to some people in my church this week who they can remember having the nuclear bomb drill, get under your desk. Not that was going to make a huge difference in a nuclear attack, but and that's just, I think we are taking this, and I may be wrong. I think those of us who are older are taking this a lot harder than most of our kids, because they don't know any different.
Right.
And that's
sad.
What we've left them with.
Yeah. It's sad and heartbreaking, but well, we thank you once again for joining us as we wrestle with these difficult topics. And again, feel free to talk to us in your local context if you want to extend the conversation. But we are so glad that you joined us, and hopefully we'll see you again. But until next time, peace be with you.